Now, I've just about got the engine prepped to go in, but because this is a conversion, you know, putting a small block Chevy onto a Toyota transmission, it's got an adapter pilot bushing in it. This little tool, I believe it's from Lyle. Man, this thing is a lifesaver. Check out how easy this thing works. Screw in there a little bit, snug it up, about like so. Grab the handy dandy grease gun. Just like that. Quick and easy removal. I am going to have to lock it in the vise and spin the tool back out, but that is probably the handiest tool I have ever bought for removing pilot bushings. It's called percussive maintenance. Bet you I can get to that bell housing bolt now. Just a little bit of custom clearancing there. Should clear that bell housing bolt. Now how about you? Are you all ready to go? Do you want to go in your new home? Do you want to go in your new home? Alright, let's get you in there. Now I got pulled off the engine stand. I'll press in the adapter pilot bushing, bolt on the flywheel, and put the clutch on so it does its spinning round clutch stuff. Alright, motor's all prepped, ready to go in. Now we just gotta swing it over there. 1, 2. There we go. Now let's get the carburetor ready. Now, when I was running my old carburetor, because of the way it's configured being a vacuum secondary, the rear secondaries never actually opened. Vacuum of wood gas getting delivered into the carburetor, it never had enough vacuum to open up the back barrels. Now, when I started playing around with this carburetor, which is the one that's currently off of the truck, I had taken right here, this is a plunger and a diaphragm that feeds vacuum from in the carburetor, and when certain vacuum is reached, it will overpower the spring that sits on top of this plunger, and it will open the secondaries by pulling this flap up as I dump gas all over everything. Basically, once vacuum is reached, it will open this plunger and the back barrels can open up and start to flow. Like I said, I'd never made enough vacuum to be able to do that in the original carburetors on this truck. Then I started playing around with, I took the spring out of here so there was no vacuum that the carburetor had to overcome to open up the back barrels. And that worked really well as far as my testing goes, but it was also uncontrollable because once the vacuum overcame this diaphragm, the back barrels were open and you couldn't make them close because there was no spring in here to force the plunger back down and close off the back barrels. Now I've put the spring back in there. I did this really old school hack method. You can see this little screw right here, that's not factory. And what that does, typically if that screw isn't there, when the front throttle or the front barrels are applied with throttle and it opens, you can see how this linkage would slide through here and it wouldn't open the back barrels until it saw enough vacuum to then open the barrels up. Now, by putting this screw in here, I've effectively taken this vacuum secondary carburetor and converted it into a mechanical 4-barrel, because now that screw stops the linkage from sliding. All 4 barrels open up, and because I put the spring back in here, now it has the spring to close the back barrels. Otherwise, under throttle, the back barrels could still sit there open. Now it's got something to force it closed. It might need an assistant spring because, as we know, wood gas is slightly corrosive. You can see a little bit of corrosion on this carburetor already, and I've only got about 3,000 miles with this carb on it. But if I need to put a secondary spring on there, should be no big deal. The other modification I did, I took the electric choke, which I have never had hooked up. There is a vacuum reference passage back in here that once the engine reaches a certain vacuum, it will bypass the choke. Instead, I took and loosened up these 3 screws, and I took inside here, there's a clock spring, which once it heats up with electricity, it would close, or technically open it. English is hard and I can't explain things. When you first turn the key on, the choke would be closed, and once that coil warms up with electricity, it would pull forward, which in turn would open the choke flap. So instead, I just took all 3 screws loose and I clocked this thing over, so now there's pressure holding the choke flap open. Mainly because I run the truck almost exclusively on wood gas. I try not to burn any gasoline in the truck at all. Plus, this is for testing purposes. This is something that just gets in the way. I would just delete it outright, but where the mechanical linkage comes through, I don't really have a good way to seal that off. So I'm just going to leave it in there for now, but have it bypassed and open. Now this is ready to go back onto the truck. I had some Chinesium spark plug wires laying around, some 8mm ones. I wanted to run those because they've got a little bit more body to them. They're a little bit stiffer. They're not as easy to route, but with these particular headers, there's no easy way to route them, but having a little bit more body to the wire makes them able to stand out here, and I don't have to build mounts to put them into. And that would be totally fine. I've had these laying around for a long time. You see how they stick way out away from the header and keep everything clear. Of course, zip tie spark plug separator wires. Mint, love that trick. But I wanted to throw these on here basically because they're thicker and they're going to hold their form better. They were advertised as solid core. I call BS. Especially because I had to cut to fit a couple wires on this thing, and if you didn't know what you were looking at, they would appear to be solid core, except that when you pull the boot off the end and you uncrimp it and you take the end off, what looks like a solid core coming out of the middle of that wire was actually a very small piece of brass that is shoved back in about 3/8 of an inch, bent over and around, and then crimped down. So yeah, Speedmaster can bite me. But we'll run these for a little while, see how long it takes to burn them up. If nothing else, I do want to get some Excel yellow wires and build a set for this, because I've had like 4 sets of wires on this truck, from having the points distributor, then the second HEI distributor, now this HEI distributor, and none of them have just routed in a way that I'm happy with. This side isn't too bad. I can get the valve cover off, no problem, without messing with the plug wires. This side is a little bit tighter, but I have to go around the steering shaft and then kind of in between over here. And this is largely due to these advanced adapter headers. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I would not recommend anybody that does V8 Toyota mini truck use these things. One is flipped up, one is flipped down. It doesn't matter which side you put them on. It almost hits the frame on both sides. It's way too tight to the starter area, in my opinion. Because I'm running a Toyota 5-speed transmission, it is super close to the clutch slave cylinder. Not happy about that. And yeah, these headers were not the right decision for this truck. Some center dump block huggers would have been a lot better. Carb's back on, mixer box back on, all hooked back up to the wood gas system. All I've got left is I need to figure out if I want to get a block off plate or just put the mechanical pump back on there. I haven't decided what I want to do yet. I got one ground wire that will bolt somewhere up in there. I thought about putting the pump back on, but I really don't know if I could. I mean, I can, but the way I have the fuel lines routed, if my electric pump fails and the wood gas system runs out for whatever reason, I don't have enough fuel line to be able to hook back up to it, so I might just get a block off plate for that. I need to bolt the slave cylinder back on, put oil in the engine, put coolant in the radiator, and at that point it's pretty much ready to fire up. One big problem, I don't think anybody has ever broken in a cam on wood gas, but I don't think I have enough fuel in the tank to finish the cam break in. So I think I'm gonna cut this video here. I'm gonna have to go get a couple gallons of gas, fill up the dyno juice tank so that we can fire off the engine after I button up those last couple things, and see if this totally unknown junkyard engine that appeared to be okay is okay, because I don't know. Does this have bad rings? Does it have bad bearings? No clue, but we're gonna find out. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.